Welcome to the Integrate Yourself Podcast with Allison and Maya. You're listening to episode 5. This is Allison Pillow. I'm an intuitive fitness and nutrition coach, and you can find out more about the services I provide and how I help people at pureenergypdx.com. You can find Maya at mayagottlieb.com. That's MayaGottlieb.com. Maya is a health integration specialist. And together, we share over 20 years experience in the field, coaching clients and doing our own research, offering simple self-care strategies and a new perspective on nutrition, movement, and emotional intelligence. Today, we invite you to integrate yourself. We encourage you to be your own authority when it comes to your health. This includes asking questions and doing your own research. We offer insight on creativity, aging gracefully, and creating a high-energy life, one where you have the energy to live the life you love. Thank you so much to Michael Wen of Michael Wen Productions for providing the music for this podcast, and thanks to Maya for doing this podcast with me every week. And finally, lots of gratitude to our listeners for all the love and support you send us every week. We appreciate you so much. You can find us on iTunes and SoundCloud. If you love what you hear today, please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and give us a great review. Leave any comments or questions on there as well. We'd love to hear from you. Today we'll be talking about the benefits of CO2, carbon dioxide. What can it do for your body? How can it help you stay healthy? How is it involved in your cardio workout? If you're doing cardio, you need to know about CO2. All this and more coming up. Please stay tuned. In this episode, we just kind of jumped right into the conversation. We were talking, and I figured it'd be a good idea to go ahead and just record this. So it ended up becoming a podcast. So enjoy, and without further ado, here's the show.
One of the greatest things I found was like the reason why CO2 is so important. Like, not even going into the mechanism of how it helps, but simple things like, the production of ATP, right? You need it. And the one thing about CO2 is that it increases metabolic rate, it increases the brain size. Like, mainly what it's doing is helping you bring in oxygen and exchanging it into the tissues. And so he says, like, if you think about it in the earth aspect, the planet and all that we're producing a lot of CO2 is not as like fearful as we think it is. Like, people have gotten so worried about it, but actually that's what the planet needs. Like, it has to have the CO2 to create the O2, like, and then the O2 needs to create the CO2, and it's all
in our body. I've not understood that either. I've not understood why, like, the carbon footprint thing, I don't really understand the basis of that. Like,
well, that's what I loved about it, because he started talking about what is, good for healthy cells. And, one of the things he talks about is high altitude. And he talks about how food, like certain foods, if they're not metabolically good for you.
About repeat? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, repeat. Like, he talks about the biological reasons why it's so important to produce CO2. Like, this is inevitably like the key ingredient. Like, and I was thinking about someone I know who's really sick, and I think she has cystic fibrosis or something, but she's dealing with a lot of health issues, and she just had a minor, like, a heart attack, and she may be like 30 years old. And I see her, and she's always got an oxygen tank hose with her, and because I guess she doesn't get enough oxygen exchange. And one of the things I didn't even realize, like, if you kind of see the dots, is that when sick people get sicker, or like when they're getting close, they hyperventilate, and then they can't regulate their breath, right? So you see these in a lot of people who get anxiety attacks or panic attacks, and then it goes into shock, and then you go into death. And one of the greatest things I saw was, oh, yeah, look at this. The way they're treating her is giving her oxygen. But and he even can blow your mind away with all the studies he knows, but he talks about some study that in 1910 by a guy named, I think it was Yandell Henderson, and he actually saw like how the flow of CO2 is important. And what he noted, and then I think somebody else did like a study, took his study and expanded it with like the firefighters. And when they go into like going into fires, instead of just giving them oxygen, they gave them like 8 to 10% of carbon dioxide. And the stimulation of that helps your body recover easier, you know, and just the concept of like, how often do we make ourselves so excitatory by at working out all the time? We're just constantly, you know, causing over exercising. So we're hyperventilating, right? And so we're not, you know, we're sucking in a lot of oxygen, right? Because our heart rate's up, we got a lot of stimulation going on, you know, and so then, you know, if you're constantly adrenalized from that, you know, constant cardiovascular stimulation, you can't, your cells don't work. Like the whole pH system gets screwed up, the conversion, the heart rate slows down because the blood vessels get reduced in terms of
That
like,
because you're getting almost like the oxygen isn't gonna be transported fast enough. Is that the
right, like
case? Okay, yeah.
your blood can't do the conversion in the tissues. Like if it doesn't have enough CO2, the O2 cannot get into the tissues.
Oh
Like
wow. Yeah.
it's literally what causes heart attacks, because some of that means that the blood pumping back can't convert. Like it gets caught through the lungs. Like
Yeah.
I can get lost in describing what he, you know, can spit out in 2 seconds, but like literally, this is why people have cardiovascular problems. You know, if you think about like how a lot of endurance racers or marathon racers die from heart attacks or have problems, you know, with you know, their whole system having strokes and stuff. I know a guy who basically, you know, won't stop running, but he's already induced a stroke. He's had eye issues where his eye basically demonized and popped out, and he's had to have surgery, but he won't stop running because, you know, the doctors all tell him, you know, yeah, this is great for you. Cardiovascular work is really good for you. Keep your cardio going.
Why did you start this in the first place? I'm wondering, like, why did cardio become so popular? And I will add one thing though too, because oh my God, I have to say that I've been learning a lot about CO2 as well, and I'll share that with you in a second. But yeah, I just it blows my mind because it still I talk to people every day that say I have to get my cardio in. Like, how can I do this? And I think there's to some extent it can be helpful, like some short spurts of it, or like hiking up and high altitudes. But for the most part, like getting on a machine and just burning it out, I just I don't know how to tell. Sometimes, I mean, I tell people straight up like that is actually not going to be as beneficial to you as a weightlifting workout, which is also can be a cardio workout. You can get your heart rate up and then bring it back down, especially if you're in a circuit kind of situation. But I don't know, we just have this ingrained, this indoctrinated thing in our heads that we have to get this certain amount of cardio in every day.
Well, I mean, one of the things
I mean, I know it's been around for a long time. I remember when it started in the 80s, but in aerobics, the whole
we got to
aerobics.
think about how it started in the health industry, right? It was all about like Jack LaLanne and, being healthy and fit meant that you were a better person because you cared about your body. It was true. You have to take care of your body. But in everything we do, we always seem to float to the extreme first. So then it's like doing all jazzercise, aerobics. It was, taking a simple format of, box steps or doing kind of, and then it was putting music to it and then making a flow. And then it was like, oh, let's pump up the jam. Let's get our heart rates going because it's so much fun. And then the kind of mentality is more of the same. This is so great. You know, they found a way to make tennis shoes into running shoes. That's an amazing accomplishment. Oh, but did you know that it's also because it makes a lot of money for somebody? Like we got to
Cardio machine.
remember. you know, I mean,
Yeah.
one thing I'll divert to is like I just learned something that it was fascinating is that we have all these smart shoes, right? They're this supportive and this, Duramax that, and oh, they help you from pronation, they help you from supination, they give you this, they gave you that. Well, someone said something that was amazing, and it fits so well for me. Like, it just says, a smart shoe means a dumb foot, because the foot doesn't function anymore because it's got so much support. And, like one of the
Yeah.
functionalities of life is, are you putting too many straps around you? Like, are you putting yourself in too much of um, you know, a protected mode because you're afraid, or are you doing something that keeps you, I think, was,
Bracing. Well, I know Katie Bowman talks about this a lot. She says, I think she uses the term bracing, or just kind of bracing your
yeah, there's
body so
some
that it's almost like being in a cast in a way. Like
cast.
you're,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You're just, it's so much support in that way. Like you're in I guess it's a permanent cast because you're wearing it every day, and not many people walk around with bare feet. But
Right, and I thought that's hilarious and sad at the same time. Like,
we're wearing
like,
masks in
and
every all our clothes too. I mean, our bras are extremely tight. I can't even. It's hard enough to find a bra that's that I can breathe in. Like I
right.
found some, but they're not really very supportive. I mean, there's really no support, which is okay too with me. But if you're a larger chested woman, I could imagine that would be an issue.
Right? Sports bras. The
Yeah.
reason why women wear sports bras is to keep those babies close to you because they don't bounce around. Well,
Yeah,
maybe
it
that's a
hurts so
clue.
deep.
Maybe it's a clue that says don't bounce around
Yeah, yeah.
until something changes otherwise, like,
Right. It actually is good to have some movement in that area from what I've read and what I have experienced myself. To the bouncing actually is a pump for the lymph nodes, right? In some
yeah.
ways.
I mean,
Yeah.
but excessive running, right,
Yeah.
is
That's
is
really not
going back to like why,
good.
you know, going on a many hours run is, you're training for something. Like if you have a training that you want to do, so you want to do an Ironman, or you want to do some kind of endurance ride or something that's causing you to do this. Yes, you have to train. But like one of the things is you have to know what you're paying for. Like you got to know the cost, and the cost is like CO2. So if you're gonna do something, and learn how to bag breathe, do the Bateko method to create CO2. Go to high altitudes. I mean,
Yeah.
athletes do it all the time. Professional ones, because they know some science about how live and work. Working out at higher altitudes trains your system better, and then you go to sea level, and then you create a great performance. But this is a whole other different lifestyle, and so if you take all these concepts and in a way that you are just, oh, I'm gonna, you know, cardioize myself to death, like you
Right.
literally are. You are
That's
going to
interesting though.
reduce. You're gonna
Cardio is like basically what you're saying. It sounds like is that cardio is what you're depriving yourself of CO2 when you're doing cardio.
Yeah, and then the
Yeah.
tissue exchange can't occur. Then the blood
Wow.
vessels are too restricted, so the blood can't flow back to the heart. And so then you have a whole problem of why the heart rate slows down, and you have a low pulse, and you have, this is not a normal. everyday life, this is a either trained athlete or someone who's about to die. Like you
That's the thing, the trained athlete. Like, what is the difference between a trained athlete and someone who's about to die? It doesn't sound like there's much, right? I mean, of
Well,
course, the trained
yeah. I mean, you
athlete.
got to think about when an athlete stops, they say to themselves,
Yeah.
I remember one of the elite athletes in the world of Ironman recognized how much damage he had done to himself. But, that's that was the plus side of the negative. Like, and I say it in that way because he was one of the top professionals. He may not have been, making a lot of money like the NBA and stuff like that, but he was a top professional, so he got to the top of his game, and that was what he was willing to sacrifice for. And one of the things is like, are you so passionate about something that that's what you want to do, and so you want to take it to whatever edge you feel, then you got to do it. You got to stress yourself and be okay with being stressed, and know that you're doing it for that reason. And and then you got to look back and say, okay, I'm willing to spend this much time, this much money, this time, effort in my life on this particular thing. And I'm wondering how many people don't realize that's what's the difference. Like, if you're just doing something because someone told you that it's a great way to get in shape, what shape do you want to get into? Like, like
It's a really good
it's
question, actually.
yeah. I mean,
I
you
try to
have so
I
many
ask people that
variables.
question when I first talk to them, and because I feel like it's important to get clear on what you're wanting for yourself, not just what you feel like you have to do. Or the weight loss thing is kind of something that a lot of people say, and I don't really feel. I mean, I think it's important to lose weight. I feel like that, but there's got to be another part of that motivates you to lose the weight, right? There's another
Well,
aspect
I
of your
kind of go
values.
back to like, what are you saying? I want to lose weight. Why? And
Yeah,
what is it? Does it mean the why means you're not comfortable in your body? Okay, so does it mean that the weight is inhibiting you from getting out of a car because your belly is so big that you just can't do anything, or you can't move in a way that makes you feel secure and balanced? I mean, that is a reason maybe to lose weight because you're seeing an excess that's inhibiting you from doing something that you want to enjoy in life. But to
absolutely.
say to lose weight can get dogmatic. Like, oh, let me lose weight because I don't fit in a size of a jeans that I desire because that's what I'm supposed to look like based on some theory of, fashion or some kind of image. And, when we want to say something to ourselves and inspire ourselves, how are we tricking ourselves, right? Because first thing you're going to do in my understanding is like, man, I'm going to tell myself I want this, and then another part of me is going to say, you want it? Oh, great. We're going to make sure you don't get it because then it keeps you wanting it. Like,
Yeah.
it's a little crazy, but it's true. Like, because that means you don't already have it and you need to desire it. So, like, a lot of psychology comes back into saying, um, you know, why do you want it? Because you really need to know the why. And I kind of think,
That's where
yeah,
the purpose comes in, right? Because
right.
they talk about purpose and how that really drives people, and
And the
that's
meaning is
got a
different for
purpose.
everyone. Like the
Yeah,
meaning of what your word and what word can mean to you means something
yeah,
totally to
what your
me.
values are, right? Like what you value is going to also determine that too.
Right. Like I'm never gonna shrink myself into a 5 foot person. Like like
No matter how much
I
you
might
try.
emaciate myself to a poundage, but I can never conform myself into a different height. So why do I conform myself into a different shape? You know,
Hold
unless
on
it's
a second. Just 1 second. Sorry. Let me just pause this. So, okay, I had some teenagers coming to the door. They're here. They're getting home from school, so that's I had to take a break and attend to my guys. So, um, but yeah, about we were talking about values and purpose and how that's important to.
Yeah, and I think we first started talking about why CO2 is important and why
Oh yeah.
amazing information you can get from Ray Pete and his knowledge of the physiology and how important it is to see a whole other way of living can be enjoyed by knowing why you're doing something. Like, the purpose of it is, and what does it mean to you? So that,
Because I think if you're just doing it because you feel like you have to do it, there's really no fun in that, and it takes all the pleasure out of it too.
and you're
So,
and you're definitely not going to do it.
well,
That's
why would you? Because someone's telling you to do it. That's it. It's human nature not to do something that someone tells you to do, right?
and that
That's
and
the
that voice maybe even be you, the voice inside you saying,
absolutely.
telling you not to do that. Yet, but you're not listening because you're like, I've got a
Yeah,
free will, and I've got to
override.
make myself.
Right. It's very, very complex, right? I want to say a thing about CO2 because this is incredible. I never thought about CO2 in cardio that way. And we actually have an altitude training room at one of the gyms that I work with as an independent contractor. And you actually visited there, so you know, and tried it. And it's really cool. I actually did I was telling you, I was doing a sprint this morning, and I think I was only on there for like 15 minutes, and I sweat. I don't usually sweat a whole bunch. I sweat like I'll work up like a light sweat, but I was sweating buckets after that. It just felt like I'm
Mm.
so much more circulated, and it's because I was in a room of like high altitude, and it's like what you can do in 15 minutes. It's like you probably spend 30 minutes to an hour doing in a regular
Let me
room.
tell you something really quick before we get off. In the
Sure.
same podcast I was listening to of the interview with Ray Pete, he talked
Hmm.
about how, like, the interviewer was asking him his thoughts about hyperbaric chambers for edema, for people who are sick and dealing with like radiation exposure or something like that. And she asked how did he think what he thought about it, and he said, his typical answer is to give a story to why or something to explain it. And he talked about how this person went he had some issues, and so he went into the hyperbaric chamber, and the doctors were regulating him, and they added some CO2. But what happened was they put too much, and they didn't know because they basically created condensation, and so they didn't see that he had passed out, and so they were trying to figure this out, like what's going on, and kind of get him back out. Well, he became unconscious, and then when they got him revived, they looked, and down below, all of his sheets and everything on the machine was soaked. And the real interesting thing was he had gone in because he also couldn't speak. Like, his sickness kept him from being able to speak. And when he got up, he could speak again. And what Ray was telling the woman was the CO2 created the sweat, because what happened was it released the water that was in the cells, because the water
Oh,
gets so lodged in a cell that's not respiratory. So, like, if a healthy cell is supposed to be with CO2, right, and it doesn't have enough, then the
yeah,
water
it's
can
not.
kind of
It's the
come
whole water.
in. The
Yeah.
water gets in the cell, causes the edema and the swelling, which is causing estrogen dominance, and so those two symbolically go together. And so this basically what happened was the guy was like recovering in a way that the body was allowing to finally release things that were keeping it from doing, and the CO2 was the factor. Like, it was the
Yes.
CO2 conversion over drew the oxygen back in and out of the cells and made it able to function. And that's why sweating is so important too, because there's a concept of the minerals flowing through your system. Like,
Yeah.
the CO2 pulls the sodium, the magnesium, the calcium into the blood. And then, from all this concept is really about why pH and acidic in alkaline is important. But if you don't understand that every part of your body has a different pH. Like your urine is not supposed to be alkaline. It's supposed to be acidic, because it's keeping the minerals. Whereas the blood is supposed to be more acidic alkaline, because it has to become, it takes the CO2 to pull the minerals out of the cell to go into the blood. Like there's so many concepts about why the conversion is so important. And I
Well,
found it such a fascination because I was like, oh, makes so much sense now.
yeah, that's incredible, and that's what I love about like reading those articles and hearing those the research stories is that it just actually makes things, it helps you make sense of everything and why we actually, maybe not, it makes you think actually how much we're doing that makes no sense as a whole, as a society, but at the same time, like, then makes sense to why we should be doing things differently, and
Right.
or why
Like,
we could do things
like a
differently. But
simple
that was
example.
awesome. Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
a simple example
Oh, I
is
just
like
wanted to say quickly.
how they
Go
tell
ahead.
people how they tell people not to take salt. Like, oh, low salt,
Yeah,
especially for people who are
that's
diabetic or
terrible.
old age.
Yeah.
But they actually need it.
Yeah.
Like it is the worst mechanism to keep the body limited because it has to have it. And that's why they crave it. But though, no, that's willpower.
Yep.
You shouldn't have salty foods.
Right.
And it's sad because we're getting so lost.
I know. What I was going to share with you about the CO2 thing too is that I think I was listening to a podcast, one of, I think, Danny Roddy's podcast, and he was talking about CO2, and I think Ray Pete was talking about how it basically creates or it helps the protein become a conductor
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
iron,
Yeah.
I guess, in the cell. So basically, what that means, it's pretty incredible, because what that means is the esoteric kind of way we think about energy in the body is actually now scientifically proven with that, because it is like there is an energy body in there that's actually there. It's not esoteric at all.
No, exactly, because it's all
Whoa.
about ions more than it is about
Yeah.
he talks about like Gilbert Lang and some other people that have disproven the lipid membrane, and there's a pump and all that. And the beauty of it is that he says, like, you're affected by salt, you're affected by water, but if you don't have the energy production to sustain, then it changes. Like you can quickly cause health or dishealth, like disease, like. And like one of the things about the protein is that you have to have the negative charge because it binds to the sodium, calcium, magnesium, and potassium. And what you're looking for is how to symbiotically work with all of them. You cannot live without. Like you have to have these minerals. That's important. But where are they being in your body is determined by an energy source. It's incredibly important. Like we've got to understand that, more than anything.
Absolutely. I think that we also have to unravel what we've been, that nutrition dogma, like where these studies originated, because they're so indoctrinated in our society, and people believe them wholeheartedly. I'm always surprised about it, actually.
Yeah, I
'Cause
mean, I have a woman that I know who just got her veins deveined. They do that stuff because she doesn't want varicose veins. And if
yeah,
you
yeah,
simply know how the the reason why you're getting these veins is because um uh the the inflammation of water in your veins, and or the demovement of stuff, like you basically
yeah, motility,
don't.
no, non-motility, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no circulation, and that's
But
probably from lack of movement in the body, but also circulation, right? Because
yes, like,
no
and
CO2.
circulation is fuel. Like, what are you
Yeah,
fueling yourself with, and how are you excited? Keeping your cells in an excitatory state. Like, if someone has high blood pressure, the first thing they say is, "Don't take salt." Well, no, you. Did you ever think that maybe you do need more salt? Like, it's because the pressure is building because the conversion isn't going. Like, makes so much more sense to say, maybe a diabetic needs sugar because there is something about the body not being able to convert it because maybe the liver's not functioning right? But
Yeah.
no, I mean, one thing they want to do is keep depriving you of the one thing. And then it's a whole
Well,
motivation thing. Like, oh, I don't have the motivation to keep myself from this. Like, no,
well,
your body's telling you something. Wake up.
right. Well, I mean, I feel like they used to treat diabetes with fructose. I mean, they used to when someone was,
Orange juice.
yeah.
Like,
So why did they stop doing that?
well, we have a one example, and that was the interview that we listened to with Gary Taubes and Joe Rogan. Is they're talking about how orange juice has too much sugar in it. It's worse than a can of
Yeah.
Coke. And the mechanism is focus on the sugar, but don't focus on the fact that it's a natural fruit that actually helps your system
Minerals in it.
run, and that
Yeah.
you actually need the sugar because it's easier, especially if we run in a system that is high adrenalized and cortisized. The processing of that is so much easier and better for your body. Now, if you can't take the acidity of it, then there's some bicarbonate you could use, like some baking soda. You can do that, or you can take
Right.
or if you don't like how much sweet it is, then you can water it down, and sip on it throughout the day because it's going to
Right.
keep your blood sugar a lot calmer and eased out than, sucking it down once and saying, oh, but they're
That's
just
the other
not
thing. If you haven't had sugar, if you're not, if you can't metabolize sugar well, then you can't just take a bunch of sugar all at once either. Because, and I think
well.
this is where the thought has come from Gary Taubes and stuff like that. Is like, the problem is not the sugar; it's the high cortisol levels, it's the high stress hormones, and that's what it inhibits your ability to metabolize the sugar and use it for energy.
Well, and here's the other thing, like you just mentioned, but somewhere in just learning all this is that maybe the reason why you can't process the sugar is your feeling. It's kind of excitatory, or you got kind of like this sweet taste or something going on. It's because that you're finally getting it and you actually need more of it. Like, one of the
Mm-hmm.
things is that you have to start to recognize, like, your body is finally getting something, and then you're like quickly going to pull the plug because, oh, it's too much. No, it's because the body's saying, yes, thank you, and I do need more of this. Please give it to me, maybe in a smaller doses, more often,
Right.
throughout the day, so that I can simulate it better, because now I'm getting it, and now I'm showing you a different response to it, but it doesn't mean run farther away from it. It means, yeah, come on, bring more.
And I think and so just, that whole thing, just saying, bring more in. I think some people are afraid of that because they feel like that is equated to like an addiction to sugar or something,
Right, because they've associated fat gain. Oh, if I eat sugar, I'm going to create fat. No, because the body is it,
not when you eat
here's
fruit.
the difference of one thing I notice is, like, are you eating sugar with a lot of gluten, which is hard to digest, right? So it's like the body has to separate all this shit from one another, and you can scratch that out, but um, or I'll just be real and everybody can hear me cuss.
Oh,
So one of the things that I noticed is, like, this concept is clearly seen in even our discussion about water intake, right?
uh-huh.
Like, people
Yeah.
think, oh, I'm dehydrated, I need more water. But what we have forgotten is, okay, do you drink coffee? Do you drink milk? Do you drink other things that are actually providing water to you through that mechanism? And
Right.
then, we kind of get into this conversation of, oh, 2 quarts of water a day, or half your body weight in ounces. But what we forget is, like, oh, well, is your body really dehydrated because it needs more water? Is it because it needs more glucose? Because it's having a reactory to, it's basically reacting to the fact that it has low energy. And, like, one of the things about flooding your system when you're in a having hyper um, uh, hypothyroid symptoms, like if you're fatigued, or generalized or whatever, you flood that system, and the intestines then become inflammatory because it can't absorb the water, right? It's like pushing the envelope. It's like flooding yourself. And then from there, you get, it prevents from the exchange. Like, it's actually too much for your system to handle. And, people then don't understand why they're up in the morning, in the middle of the night, having to go to the bathroom, or they're really, having restless nights, because they've been told, like, more water's better, but they don't really know their system's running too high to even take in water. Or they've had already enough water for their system for that day.
Well, and you can flush yourself out too much, too. It can actually deprive you. It can malnourish you in some ways. I remember drinking when I drank way too much water, and that's pretty much, I think, what was going on. And I think you can, like you said, you can get mineral water, you can get spring water locally wherever you live, but also most places, if you kind of go out to country areas, but which is better because you have some kind of nutrient. It's better actually to drink it with some kind of nutrient, like, or juice or milk, or something, or bone broth, because your body's going to want to absorb that much more than it would like some fluoridated tap water,
or even a carbonated water, right? Because then it provides you CO2.
Yeah, we're talking about carbon.
And then it's got two mechanisms in itself, because most, carbonated water is going to provide the carbonation and help with hydration of some sort, right? And it's not easy to drink fast, if you notice that, right? So you can't flood your system really quickly with a lot of water. Like, you have to sip on it, which is more stimulating, easier for your body. And and if you go to where you're fortunate, where you live, you can go to some carbonated springs. I mean, you immerse your whole body in it. It's like, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. You can drink it too.
Yeah. Well, that's where mineral waters were really coming from. Like, this idea of how mineral water is so important for your body. And and we didn't really know why until some, but the ancient ones did it naturally because they knew that it felt good, and there was something good about it. And you've got to think about all these companies that are wanting you to buy more bottled water. And the health industry is influencing that by saying to be healthy. And I'm not saying water's bad, because I do know, like, if you are exercising, you better drink some water. Like, you can't just, not drink water, but you got to understand what's happening to you. Like, one of the greatest things I learned about Ironman and competing was to learn what my body needed.
I've got to get the doorbell again. Keep talking. Okay, so you were talking about water and how it's being basically, we're actually, it's kind of silly that they're trying to sell us water.
Right.
It's
because
I don't really understand that, to be honest with you, but somehow that crept up on us, and now it's like all over the place, and now we feel like we need to buy water.
Right. I mean, I think one of the best examples is Nancy, the woman that we met, where she actually followed the regimen of a lot of water, and from my point of view, if I remember correctly, equates that her fungus epidemic, like, basically she got so much fungus that she had to have surgery, and she went out of balance too much of water. And then, like, just seeing, like, how people are programmed, to buy a lot of water means that they have to carry water around, right? Like, it was fascinating to see the change, even for myself, because I started to feel like, I needed another thing with me, because I wasn't going to survive going from one corner to the next corner,
Right.
or and if it was in a situation where I was crossing the Sahara, yeah, I want to carry water,
Right. Yeah, But I guess it's that survival thing, right? It's like putting us in a little bit of a survival state
it's
or
constantly
mentality.
separating us from our money. Like, it's definitely concepts of, like, the big new thing, right? And what I kind of find is, like, why I kind of now look at, like, what's the new thing and why I want to stay away from it, you know? 'Cause
Like, what's the story behind it?
yeah, like, I hate to say it, but most people, most of the issues that we're coming around is, like, big myths mean big money, because if you look at everything that we're giving is really simple. Like, you're really, life isn't supposed to be so complicated, right? Like, if we really want to simplify our lives and take the stress down,
Mhm.
and so that we can feel our bodies, get clear in our mind, and have more of a life that we feel that we enjoy. We want to keep away from feeling like we have to have something that's not already in us or around us that we need. Like, we're always in an abundance, but what we do is we don't see the simple things in the abundance. Like, how fascinating your body is, like, how crazy it can adapt, and what you fear about, uh, in terms of health and fitness and all these things are just a reminder of that you're not trusting what you already have. Like, um,
Right.
I think one of the beautiful things about recognizing that water is important, not to say it's not,
Hmm.
it's that you know what you need it for. And, in terms of, no, not overthinking it, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I don't think we need nearly as much as what's recommended. I think again, it relates back to high blood pressure, like dehydration. Well, it might not just be because it might not be because you need more water. I mean, it seems like it would be, right? But it could be that you need minerals.
Or you need
And,
food, or you
or
need
you need
sugar.
food. Yeah, exactly.
God forbid, God forbid, you might need some sugar. It's okay. It's not
Yeah,
the
I mean,
it's not the cocaine that you think it is. Like, and yes, fruit is better than processed white sugar, but processed doesn't mean it's bad. It means that it's just been put in a form to easily assimilate, and
yeah,
when
digestible.
you're in a stress response, the first thing you're going to do is give them the quickest thing that they can metabolize,
Yeah.
And so a
Well,
glass of orange juice is truly helpful and healthy for you. And
right.
when you wake up in the morning, an orange juice and some eggs to balance the sugar and the carb
All
with
right.
the protein and the fat, like, with that's a perfect breakfast, because it's taking this food and utilizing it in the best way possible. And a glass of orange juice in the morning is to control the cortisol levels, to keep you from living on stress for the rest of the day. Like, you know.
Right. Exactly. So, but yeah, I'll just say one more thing about that. When you said that about if you're under high stress, like even physical stress, like most athletes, that's why they used to always recommend that you would have like, and Gatorade is terrible. It's got so many additives and crazy, crap in it. But I guess the bottom line is it's sugar, and it's giving your body that quick energy source, really, because you need it right then. You're not going to be able to digest anything else. You've been working out super hard, or pushing yourself to the ultimate limit. um, so
Well,
in that situation, you're not going to be able to eat a whole 5 course meal.
well,
Hey, you know what else?
and Gatorade is one of those things where, if you look at how it was first produced, it was based off of fruit juice and water, and then they added a little salt to balance it. And you can totally do that with some orange juice through the day.
Right.
Like, if you're having a stressful day, take some orange juice, liquid, put some water in it, put a little salt in it. Like I said, a bicarbonate, baking soda if you need to, because it's too acidic for you in the beginning.
Right.
But you'll adapt.
People have a hard time
You'll
digestion of it.
Yeah, like if you're
Yeah.
having this reflux or whatever, just to taste. Everything's to taste. Like, it's not extreme.
Yeah.
You're not gonna. But
Right.
what you're doing is making Gatorade. You're basically doing what they did when they made it. A formula to help these athletes, because they needed the salt, they needed the sugar, they needed the water and the hydration, and they made it into a product. And then the product got more more formulated with colorings and stuff, because people got all crazy about how to make more money selling it. And so you have to adapt to change. And so they, instead of having green lime all the time, or whatever color that was, like a lime green color,
Yeah.
then you had an orange, and then you had red, and then you had blue. It's like how they do any kind of promotional work. It's something new, and then they change the formula to create more, electrolyte balance. It's like, it's all the same thing. It's just marketing.
Yeah, and so the bottom line is you can make your natural Gatorade, or the original Gatorade, I'd like to say.
Yeah.
Which is orange juice. And orange juice has minerals in it too that actually create, it helps the thyroid do its work, and the liver too, because the liver needs glucose. But we'll get into more of that kind of stuff later, because I do want to talk about thyroid. But yeah, we definitely, I think we hit on enough stuff today. So let's call it a day with this podcast, and close it up. Do you have anything to say in closing, Maya?
I think keep it simple. Keep it so simple that it is almost like ASAP. You're basically as simple as possible, and keeping it simple. Like, that's important. And so what we're really looking at is how to de-stress your life, and then that's getting back to the fundamentals, maybe.
I love it. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you, Allison.
And I will talk to you next time.
See you soon.
Have a good day.
Bye.
All right. Bye. Of course, if you like what you hear today, please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. You can also find us on SoundCloud. You can go to my website at pureenergypdx.com to listen as well. If you find us on iTunes, please give us a great review if you love what you hear, and share with your friends. We really appreciate it so much. And again, we appreciate our listeners. We appreciate all your love and support that you give us every week. And just keep listening and sending out that love and support. Thank you so much. Feel free to check us out on Instagram at Pure Energy PDX, and on YouTube under Allison Pillow. It's the Pure Energy Wellness channel. On there, I'm providing lots of videos, both on Instagram and YouTube, for your movement practice, your foundational movement practice. So definitely check it out. Next time we'll be talking about women's empowerment, the light and the shadow side of that. So make sure that you tune into that one. It's going to be a really, really good one. We're going to be talking about the emotions and kind of the consequences, I guess, to being too much in one direction or the other with your masculine and feminine energy. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.